DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We are joined now by former Masters winner Mike Weir, joining us from the Senior PGA Championship, Bradenton, Florida, the Concession Golf Club just south of Tampa. Mike, good morning.
Morning, fellas.
Golf is changing nonstop. And I heard the announcement from the PGA Tour, all this talk about redoing the schedule and taking weeks off majors. The senior major is already a big deal, but you might start getting an open spot in the calendar, Mike. They could become an even bigger deal.
Yeah, no, it is changing the tour. I mean, I've listened into some of the changes from our new commissioner, Brian Rolap, and I like the changes with the no cut policy and having do away with those and having these events that they all have cuts and there's a little bit bigger fields. There's not these limited field events where, these players, if you're at a certain level, you get in those and you can just gain such an advantage over the rest of the tour if you're in those compared to a guy who's not in those, and it's hard to play catch up. So I think that's going to be a good change.
Mike, I think the most important question I can ask you right now is how was the Masters Champions Dinner menu? Because the same guy is going to put it on again next year.
Yeah, exactly. It was great this year. I'd be okay if he chooses the same thing. He had these elk sliders as an appetizer as we sat out on the balcony and had a drink before we went in for dinner, and they were awesome. That's what I served as my main course was elk. So I think it was the first time since I served that 2003 that elk was on the menu anywhere. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, he did a great job. I mean, he said some great things, great words. Gary Player and Jack Nicklaus both got up and said some great things. They're the only, Rory now joined them as the only three Grand Slam champions in that room. So it was good to hear from all three guys.
Americans tend to eat on the go, and the Masters, when you see all the different courses in that, for my in-laws' 50th anniversary, we went on a cruise to Alaska, and you have these days at sea, and it seems like the dinner and the courses is spread out over like 2 or 3 hours, just kind of keep people entertained while they're on the ship at sea in that. And when you talk about that with the Masters, and I see the photos and hear the reports on that, the courses and all that, I mean, the dinner, is it really an evening? Are you spending 2, 3, 4 hours together?
Yeah, it's a couple hours. I mean, we get there. Most guys kind of roll in right around 6 to 6:30, maybe at the latest, and we, everybody just kind of has a drink and catches up with one another, and I get to have a conversation with Jack Nicklaus and Mark O'Meara and Nick Faldo and some of the international guys I play with in the President's Cup like Hideki and Adam Scott, and we just kind of catch up. That's the one thing about Augusta that's great. You see familiar faces that you might not see all year. At least from my perspective, playing the Champions Tour, I get to see players that play the regular tour that I don't get to see them anymore, and so that's great. For me, the President's Cup, President's Cup players that I played with and that actually captained in 2024 to catch up with those guys, and so that's a great part of the Masters, and especially the Tuesday night dinner, and then that generation of Nicklaus and Ray Floyd and Tom Watson, guys that I've always admired. You get a chance to chat with them, and that's the most special thing for me on that Tuesday evening.
Yeah, that is just so cool. I can only imagine that would just be a fantasy to be able to just be inside the, that what they say, the fly on the wall, because golf, the way it connects the past with the present is really unparalleled in all of sports. And as somebody who's a golf fan, to have you be able to say, yeah, I was talking with Jack and I was talking with Gary Player. I mean, we're talking about one guy who's 90 and another guy's 86 years old, and you're having conversations and you have things in common. It just blows me away knowing that could happen every year. And it's the one place at the Masters, which is, for me, it's almost like a religious experience. If I had ever had been there and be able to experience, just to walk the grounds, which I've not done. Now, as we watched the tournament, there was a lot of talk about the conditions of the course. What did you make of them?
Yeah, the course was very healthy. It was in phenomenal condition, best I've seen it in a long, long time. It did play tough, firm, fast, especially hole locations that were on the elevated part of the greens, kind of up on a knoll, a little hump on top if the pin was sitting up there. those spots get exposed with a little bit of wind and in the great weather that we had that week. So those areas got even extra firm. It was tough to hold the ball around the green, around the pin in those locations. So that played quite tough when the pins were in some of those locations. But I thought it was a fair test, a tough test. I thought they did a great job with the setup. It ended up being a great championship. It looked like maybe Rory was going to run away with it on Friday, but as things seem to happen around there, it always seems to even itself out and end up being a great championship.
He's halfway to his second career slam. There's only two guys who pulled that off. He's sitting on 6 majors with some legendary names right in front of him at 7, 8, and 9, and only 3 guys have ever got to 10. Sometimes we're prisoners of the moment and the expectations get too high. Sometimes we dismiss people and what they're capable of too quickly, especially if they're doing something unusual that hasn't been done very often. Excuse me. What do you think the expectations should be for the rest of his career, knowing he's got at least 5 and maybe 10 years to rack up even more majors?
Yeah, I mean, he's, I think it's easy to look at Rory's game and have high expectations. It's such a pleasing game to watch, I would say. He just plays, unlike maybe a lot of the modern day players who are quite technical and maybe overanalyze everything. Rory plays with a sense of freedom, and I think it's just, as a golf fan, watching him play, I love players that play with that kind of freedom. I wish, envious of, I wish I could play with that much freedom. I tend to overthink things too much. So, but I think, the talent's evident. So the expectations are high. I think, having kind of checked that box of the Grand Slam now, you hope that, inside mentally he is freed up and can just kind of play with house money and keep racking up these majors. I hopefully he doesn't have any injuries. I hopefully he stays healthy. And when you have ball speed like that, can hit it that far, and the rest of your games keeps getting refined as he gets a little bit older. His wedge game was maybe a weakness of his. Now it's not. His pitching, his putting. That's all that part of his game has sharpened up so much in the last couple of years. So, before he won the Masters in 2025, he was really contending in a lot of tournaments and had some setbacks and some heartbreaks. And now he kind of got over the hump. So I suspect he's going to, take that confidence of getting it done now the last couple of times he's been in contention and, maybe ride that wave here for a few years.
This is a paid message from GoFundMe Giving Funds, the zero-fee DAF. Meet Andy. He uses GoFundMe's giving funds to donate to causes he believes in.
I've been using donor-advised funds for about 20 years now. I find them really convenient because I could sock away the money when it makes sense for me, and then I can distribute it when it makes sense for me. So for many years, I had a donor-advised fund at one of the big financial supermarkets, and I generally donate to 3 or 4 regular charities. And the reason why I moved from that big financial supermarket to GoFundMe was because the GoFundMe fees were 0. So I used to pay a fee every year at the financial supermarket. I don't pay a fee at GoFundMe. And I like where they invest my money while it's waiting to be put to work.
Already have a DAF? Transfer it over. We'll cover the DAF pay fees. Start your giving fund today at GoFundMe.com/giving. That's GoFundMe.com/giving. This message reflects one person's experience.
One of the things I find is kind of weird with golf, and obviously you've been in that position, maybe you'll be in that position this weekend in Florida, is you're playing and you're competing against guys, but you don't necessarily know how they're doing because they may be 2 or 3 holes ahead or behind, but you can hear cheers and all that. When you're in the middle of it, and the Masters that you won, you needed to go into extra holes. How do you deal with that in terms of, I wonder what player XYZ is doing? I hear a cheer. Or can you just knock that stuff out of your mind and being focused literally on the shot in front of you and not worry about where the leaderboard is because it's something you don't know nor can you control?
Yeah, it's a great point. You definitely feel the surge of energy, and not only in your own game, but if you do hear a roar ahead, it kind of hits you internally, and it's, I think, just human nature to wonder what happened. Was that a eagle or birdie or something ahead? But you just don't want it to take away from what you're doing in the moment. Jack Nicklaus, was famous for just compartmentalizing and saying, I can't control what the other guys are doing. I have to stay in my own little bubble here and It's easier said than done, but that's what we try to do as players, is really focus on what we're doing. For myself, I know the type of player I am. I'm not an overpowering guy. I can't, all of a sudden think, oh, I'm 2 behind, I'm going to attack this par 5 and try to get to this par 5 and 2. That's not playing my game. My game, I have to hit great wedges, and especially if we're talking about Augusta, you have to hit great wedges and attack par 5s that way. This course this week, it might be a little bit different. At Senior PGA, the courses aren't quite as long, so I can do that maybe a little bit more, but PGA Tour courses, I could never do that. I had to just stick to my strategy. And yeah, you feel those waves of emotion from other groups, from other players, but you just kind of compartmentalize and stick to your game and execute your game plan.
It was interesting coming down the stretch as Scotty Scheffler started to get closer and closer, and he made a big putt. And the announcers on the broadcast are like, Rory heard that. What he doesn't know is if that was a birdie or an eagle. That could have been an eagle. It wasn't. It was a birdie. And so does that even impact you when you're standing over a putt thinking, hey, I just got to get down in 2 from here, I'm 25 feet away or whatever, or thinking I really got to go for it, which, brings its own risk. You might leave yourself a really difficult second putt going for it.
Yeah, I'm sure it affected Rory. That was a heck of a birdie Scotty made. He hit it in the trees right and then pitched out, hit a tree, and he was still in the trees. Somehow managed to birdie on 15. That's what Scotty seems to do. But I remember Nicklaus, and I believe it may have been in the 70s sometime, and I think it was Weiskopf and Watson were standing on 15 green, and Jack rolled in this big putt up the hill on, I think it was 1975, a long time ago, but he rolled this 40-footer up the hill in on 16. The crowd's going crazy, and those guys had to wait as the crowd, kind of calmed down before they could hit their putts on 15. And so those things do matter, and they do have an impact on leaders and the mindset. You might think you have it in the bag, and then some guy chips in on you, or makes a long putt, and it can have an effect. It can rattle you. It can kind of maybe even get you more focused on what you have to do, but depends on the moment, I guess, depends on the player on how it affects them.
So now we've had 2 guys in the last pairing on Sunday saying, man, he didn't say anything to me. You had Young this year and DeChambeau last year, I think it was, and Rory's not a talkative guy. When you go out there, are you going to be yucking it up with Vijay Singh, or is it standard that you just keep to yourself?
This stage of the game in our 50s, we probably talk a little bit more. I would say that, in my day on the tour, I was pretty into my own game and didn't say much, and kind of had to have the blinders on, so to speak, to play my best golf. You got to know what works for you. A Lee Trevino type guy who has to talk, and that keeps his energy loose, where Nicklaus might not say much, or Ben Hogan might not say much. I might not say much. You got to just know your personality, I think. But, at this stage of the game for me, I've known Vijay a long time. We're good friends. Yeah, we'll be talking. He doesn't know hockey very well, so we can't talk hockey. But maybe he loves his cricket. Maybe he's from Fiji and rugby and cricket.
He won't drop any Mammoth
talk on the road. How
about
much can you follow the Utah
year?
Mammoth? The NHL is here now. The arena is packed. People are going nuts. They're going to play Vegas in the playoffs. We don't have the schedule yet. You got to finish the regular season, play this last game, and then we'll get the playoff schedule. How much are you tracking that?
Oh yeah, I'm following it closely. I'm excited we're playing Vegas. Weren't sure who we were going to play there, but seems like a natural rivalry there. Down the I-15. Seems like whenever we play them in the regular season, there's a bit of an edge to those games. And get ready, Utah. Playoff hockey is the best. It is so awesome, so intense. It's been part of my life since I was a kid, watching Detroit Red Wings, which were my team close to where I grew up. And now we have it in Utah. I'm super excited. I can't wait for it to get started.
Were you a few months ago at the Sandy post office? I understand you were badgered by some lady. Is that true?
That's right. That is true. Your wife came up and introduced herself. That's right. Exactly.
And she said she was starstruck. I said, why didn't you tell him who you were? I said, he probably remembered the old guy he played golf with, and maybe you could have a conversation.
Yeah,
she couldn't get out the words.
That's funny. That's funny.
Last thing before we let you go, you mentioned, in the 50s, different attitude. You're 55 now, and how long do guys play senior golf? What is your plan for that, or at least what is your goal for that? Because we tend to see guys that are fresh into the senior tour at 50, 51 have the most success. I haven't really tracked how long guys tend to stay out there. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody. I mean, obviously you have the benchmark with Bernhard Langer still playing great is mid-late 60s. I think he's 68 now and still playing great golf and still wants to play and is competitive and loves to compete. I mean, I still feel that. I still feel like I'm motivated and want to practice and work at my game and love to work at it. If that goes away and I want to be home more, that's what I'll do. But right now I'm still motivated and still healthy. Lately, my last couple of years, my back's been great. So I've been able to practice a little bit more, and so I'm still enjoying myself. It's an enjoyable time out there. So, if I can play into my early 60s, that would be awesome. I hope so.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we'll be tracking you out there at the Senior PGA Championship, Bradenton, Florida, the Concession Golf Club, and we'll see how you do, Mike. People are still following you here. Thanks for jumping on the air and talking to some of your fans.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
Mike Weir, Masters champ, joining us from Bradenton, Florida. And PK, fly on the wall. How awesome would it be?
It would be the thrill of a lifetime.
Leaning on a post on that balcony, just watching people talk. And over the years, and Mike, we didn't get into it this time. I think he's talked about it other times he's been on. He got to meet Jack Nicklaus when he was 11 years old. And now 44 years later, he gets to go to a champions dinner with him. That is so cool. That is just awesome.
Right. Yeah, the story is, and he's told it to me several times, that he wrote Jack when he was a young boy about how to be a professional golfer, and Jack wrote back. That's just amazing. And there he is, rubbing shoulders, listening to him talk. He just dropped Watson, Weiskopf, Ben Hogan, these, those other guys that they know. And to be able to go there. I asked him one time on the air, if you had a choice, Mike, would you rather go to the champions dinner or heaven? And he, he laughed at the question, because
What's
that
the
is
difference?
heaven. That's heaven on earth. You're getting both
Right?
there. And to be in that exclusive club, and they take that picture every year. I mean, that's just got to be something that's just as unbelievable. We see it like the Baseball Hall of Fame when they have those inductions. I think it's like the last Sunday in July, right? And the guys talking, and in the back are all the living Hall of Famers who want to be there and have the health to be there. And you look at Frank Robinson, whoever they might be, and you see those guys, these legends of the game that are still living. And that's what you have in golf there, and that dinner. And it's such a cool tradition. I mean, I can argue that is the coolest tradition among players, that, not playing the Hell's Bells when Trevor Hoffman comes in or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I'm talking about an actual player thing. That is just so awesome. And to know that he's a part of that and he's a Masters winner, it's wow. I mean, if obviously as a golfer, that's got to be the ultimate, and to be able to experience that, so cool.